Hi there folks, I'm here by the garlic patch today and I wanted to show you two specific details with our cultivation method and what problems we had with the garlic last autumn. So you can see that at first look the garlic patch looks pretty good, a dense stand and nice thick stems and good green foliage, but I wanted to backtrack a little. Last autumn when we planted this garlic, it's about 360 cloves, and it started germinating sometimes before New Year, and then the neighbors' hens found a way to enter our garden, and even though I liked the service, they found the garlic particularly appealing because it was sticking just a tiny bit over this mulch, which was thicker back then. So they found the tiny garlic tops very appetizing, and they munched on a lot of the garlic tops. So in result, some of the garlic, maybe 20%, I have not counted precisely, but by the looks of it, grew distorted, such as this one here. You can see how different it is from the one next to it, and also here, and they're more in the rows when you know there had to be 10 garlic plants growing. This one as well, they have distorted tops because their main growing tip, the core which grows out of the original clove, is distorted by the pecking of the hens and sometimes the scratching. So this one and this one as well, they will have to be they won't be able to make proper ripened garlic heads. This one as well. So some of them, such as this one, they came out later because they were pecked as well, not as much. So they try to make a good stem and head, but it's day and night difference compared to the regular one. Now we prevented the hens from pecking all of the garlic by putting a mesh over it, and then they started walking over the mesh and collapsing it. But anyhow, we somehow resolved the problem, so most of the garlic is in good condition. The ones which are distorted or growing weakly or not growing at all, we try to pull out of the ground before harvest time, so there won't be any tiny garlic heads or undeveloped cloves underground for next year. And this is an unexpected yield for us as well, because this kind of forces us to continuously harvest garlic and then eat it in a salad. Now I'll have to use my digging knife because, as you know, our soil is rather dense vertisoil, very clay heavy, so it's not always easy to just pull out the garlic, especially when it hasn't rained for a few days and the surface just below the mulch is rather dry. In depth there is enough moisture, so at root level the moisture is abundant, but at the surface it's basically dry, and the mulch is preventing evaporation in our sunny hot days which we're having lately. So using my gardening knife, I'll just dig out two of those, and you can see that I cut the roots with the knife so it will be easier to harvest. You can see that it's still not developing heads, but its growth is not very. You can see the splitting of the skin here. It's a deformity due to the bad start it had when it started growing. And this one, This one had real potential. It probably was a large clove as well. You can see how much thicker this stem is, but the removal of the central growing stem, it leads to multiplication of the stems, such as this, and it starts kind of turning into this whole lot of tiny little plants as it's trying to recover. So this won't result in a good garlic head, and probably we'll just eat that in a salad. This one is perfectly edible as well. Just chop it in a salad. And as a comparison, I will just pull another one of the garlics, which is growing well. And here it is. You can see that the base of the stem has started to thicken now, which means that in the next couple of weeks the actual cloves will begin to form in here. And at that stage, here in Bulgaria, this is still called green garlic or fresh garlic. But then when you have the cloves here formed and the head still not ripened, we call this milk garlic, and it's one of the early summer delicacies which we enjoy each year. And in order to have the best possible harvest of garlic heads for later, we try to harvest the weaker stems, the smaller stems, for fresh garlic and for milk garlic, and then leave those thicker stems for ripening later in the summer. That first part of the clip was shot at the very early June, maybe the 2nd of June, and today is 11th, so 10 days have passed between the two parts of the clip, but still I wanted to finish the short garlic info which I started, even though some life projects and stuff got in the way. It is again at sunset when I'm shooting. That's usually the only time I can spare for those videos, so that's the main reason they have been few and far in between. But I'll talk more about that in another video. Now let's talk about the garlic. So in those 10 days, the garlic started to grow their flowering stems, or the scapes. We grow hardneck garlic, which means that each year every plant grows one of those stems, which if not harvested and left to grow, it will bloom, it will produce a flower, and then a cluster of small tiny clove-like things, which are called bulbils in English. Of course, the scapes are tasty treat, a good snack, and it can be eaten in a salad, or maybe in a stir fry, or sauteed, even barbecued. I've cooked them on a cast iron plate on an open fire. So it's now time to start harvesting those scapes. If you don't harvest the scapes of the garlic, you run the risk of the head splitting when starting to ripen. Let me just have a little nibble of that. It's tasty and very, very garlicky. Our variety of garlic is rather hot. So after we harvest those scapes, maybe make a pesto, maybe cook some of them. It's an indication, after they make a couple of twists here, that the heads of the garlic have started developing underground. In the previous part of the video, I talked about the milk garlic stage, which we have a name for here in Bulgaria. So when I see the scapes starting to twirl, I know that I can start harvesting garlic with milk heads, which means that there are bulbs formed in the head, but the garlic is still not ripe. And at that stage, usually most of the stem is too tough to eat unless it's chopped finely and cooked, but it's not so good for fresh eating. But the milky white, very mild and very tender new cloves are an amazing early summer treat. So in the coming days I'll be harvesting the scapes and then pulling a few of the heads to check for the milk garlic, and I'll show you one of those in a separate part of the video, which will probably be shot in a couple of days from now. So it's been a couple of days and we already harvested the garlic scapes. I will include a photo here, and we started eating those finely chopped in salads and also in a kind of hummus with chickpeas, like a type of pesto, and we also gave some away to friends. But now I wanted to also show you somebody threw a strawberry here, maybe our toddler. So I wanted to show you after the scapes have been harvested. Let me just pull this random piece of couch grass, and this is an indicator for us that the heads of the garlic have started to form already on the ground. So if you find one of the plants with the scape removed and you pull it out of the soil, which will be easier now after a week of rain, you can see this milk garlic stage which I talked about. Let me try this with a single hand. So I'll just peel a couple of layers of the outermost leaves of the garlic. You can see how the head of the garlic is now starting to form, and if we cut this open, you'll be able to discern each of the individual cloves in their still milky white and very tender and gentle and very pleasant to eat skin layers. So this is what we call milk stage or milk garlic. And now that the scapes have been harvested, we started pulling some of the milk garlic as well. We had guests the other day, and we put a bunch of garlic for them as well. But this means that in 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the temperature and the rain, the garlic will be ready to harvest. I've seen on YouTube maybe 24 ways to determine when the garlic is ready to harvest, by the most peculiar of which is judging what percentage of the leaves is starting to dry out, which I find very hard. I'm not good at judging percentages of dry leaves. So what works best for us is to start harvesting just a couple of heads daily for the salad and for fresh eating, and judge by yourself when the garlic is ready, which is very easy to do, because what you're looking for is this outer layer. It should be papery and dry. If you had rain, it will be papery and moist, but the topmost layers of the head here will be rather dry and kind of peeling off. And usually, yes, some of the leaves starting to dry, but in very hot and very dry summers, we've had garlic which is all yellow from tip to bottom, and still it's not properly ripened. When you pull a head out, you can still sense that just by feel and by touch, you can see that it's not ready to be harvested. That was all from our garlic for now, and I'll see you in the next one.